Hey, it's Paul Baines with GreatDad.com, and I'm here with my weekly series talking about dads and about all things related to the family experience. And I've got a guest today who's not actually a dad, but has some valuable information for us parents who have ever even considered giving in to their kids about having a dog. So welcome, Brady Foulk.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. And yes, if you're listening and you have a dog, you're in the right place. We're going to talk about some dog training. But if you don't have a dog, we're going to talk about leadership, kids, and like everything kind of in between. So I'm happy to spend the next, like 20, 30 minutes with you.
Yeah. So you've got this really interesting background. I think you're doing mostly the dog training as most of what you do, but you're also a trained coach in some of the modalities that may be familiar to some people, NLP, ABA therapy, which I did not know about before, applied behavior analysis, which is used for special needs kids. So you've got this part that's focused on humans, and then you've transplanted some of that learning to how to work with animals. Do I have that right?
You have it right.
Yeah.
Basically, I tried to fix myself first, and then I was
Yeah.
like, wow, that stuff is pretty interesting. And I started applying it to dogs, and then my clients run into obstacles too. So we reprogram things and rewire things and create new connections.
So which came first, the dog part or the people part?
The dog part.
The dog part.
Like it was like me. I went to a Tony Robbins event and I started diving into like NLP and all that good stuff. And then I got laid off from my job in 2019. And then I was like, well, shoot, I don't have this income. Maybe I should. And my dog he was 2 at this time. And I had been helping friends kind of just on the side. And I was like, well, when would now be a good time to start this?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what intrigues me about that thing is about that the coaching part is that we in coaching really believe that people are changeable, that you can, especially given the research the last 50 years, that you can rewire the brain. Somebody is not stuck in place. Ideas are not fixed. Habits are not fixed. You can change. So bringing that to the dog world, which I think a lot of people probably do think, oh, I've got a German Shepherd and he does this and I'll never be able to change him. I got to get rid of him. Or a yappy little dog who's like barking all the time and I just have to get rid of him because the neighbors can't handle that. So how does that, is it a direct translation, dogs equal humans equal dogs, or is there something more complicated in that relationship?
This is fun. People have different reactions when I say this, but yeah, our brains are working very similarly.
Yeah.
We're using our prefrontal cortex. We have more area that we're using. Dogs use about maybe like 12 to 13% of their prefrontal cortex, but that's your decision making, your thoughtfulness skills. And the way I look at it is in patterns. So pattern recognition, pattern creation, and pattern utilization.
Mm-hmm.
So a stimulus happens and then there's a response. And in
Right.
between, there's a gap. And so my job is to show people this gap and to say, well, what do we want the thing to happen? And can we make this dog more thoughtful?
That's really interesting because I do a lot of work with something called positive intelligence, which is trying to, as humans, trying to understand when you have that stimulus, what your reaction is, and then trying to change that reaction to a more positive reaction. So when you come to dogs, and I think we're learning more and more about the animal world now and the fact that they may be thinking a lot more than they do, what could be going through a dog's mind, when you say sit, are they going through a bunch of options like, what the hell does that mean? Well, how do I please him? I'm going to rebel, or damn that owner, he's after me again. How do you have a feeling for how they are processing? Is it anything similar to the way we do?
So we're definitely in a different range in terms of our processing power,
Sure.
obviously. Dogs process maybe up to like a 4 or 5 year old. So, and yet they're still very capable of doing a lot of things. Like I've trained my dog how to open up the fridge and bring me a drink and then to go back and shut the fridge because we don't raise wild animals, right?
Right.
And all that we're doing is when we say sit, we want to make sure that it's linked up to the behavior of sitting. And where most people get caught up is they think dogs understand words and they're just like sit. And it's like, no, you could say potato for all I care if
Right.
that's linked up to the behavior. And so that's where we get into training the behavior first. So how I train sit is I teach them to touch their nose to a target. It could be a target of anything, right? They were just to touch their nose to this thing. And then once they know to touch their nose to this thing, whenever I put it out, then I can move it up into a sit, into a down, roll over, any position that I want, really. And then I'll say, you ready, steady, sit. And then I'll guide them into a sit without using a treat. Like I'll use the target. And by doing that, they learn that sit means to go into this position. Sit means to go into this position. And then we condition it until it sticks.
So that implies that they can't learn a language. Like they can't learn, they, like you say, if you said potato and you train them in that behavior, they would infer that potato means sit. I mean, without understanding that it's a different word for sit. But do you think they have any language ability? I mean, their barks mean different things, right? Their way, the sounds they make different things.
Yeah, I think they can learn every language because it doesn't matter if he speaks, like my girlfriend's Colombian and she speaks in Spanish to him. So she'll say like pata for paw instead of shake. And then he's learned that pata or shake both means give me your paw.
Right.
And the way that you would do that, and because even as humans, right, some people believe a certain words, like for example, my girlfriend used to call tortilla chips nacho chips. And it's like we have this idea, we know
Right.
what, well, I know what she's talking about. We're just using a different word, and it's communication at its finest. So just showing them that this word, it links up to this behavior. And then it's our job to, you could teach them German, Spanish, whatever language you want. But are they like, well, we could dive even deeper because there are dogs like Stella or Bunny, the talking dogs that have these talking buttons. Have you seen that
Right.
before?
Yeah, I've seen those on TikTok. Yeah.
Right. And so they've
Fascinating.
actually done some very interesting things where their dogs will say, like, help, tummy hurts. And it's like, what did you just say?
Yeah.
And it's like, and then they go and throw up. And you're like,
Yeah.
wow, that's some actual, like, that's some thinking power. Or it's like, mom, walk now. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, you guys are like, you're figuring these things out. So there are some possibilities for them forming sentences, and you got to give them the tools in order to communicate with us.
Yeah, it's interesting that they get that syntax correct. If you watch some of those TikTok videos, they don't say "walk, mommy, now." It's kind of like they put it almost into a subject verb, object kind of sentence structure. Even
Which, if
so
you were to
strange
dive into that, like that's probably because of us, like, because when you train them, you're going to teach it in a certain
in an order.
sequence.
Yeah,
And so, like, we rub off on them more than we think we do.
yeah. So when you see some of these TikTok videos, the cups one or the buttons one that they do, but some of the other ones where they really seem to be emoting about a situation, and they look like they've been something more than just trained. Like I saw one last night that was just blew my mind. It was a like a golden retriever, and he wanted to wear these butterfly wings that lighted up. This is really freaky. I mean, he goes to the owner and he's carrying these butterfly wings, and he's like putting his paw on the butterfly wings and saying, put these on me. So he gets these butterfly wings on. Then he starts strutting around the room. And then he goes and he picks up a purse, and he takes the purse. Or maybe it's a she, I don't know. But he takes the purse and to the mirror, and then like does a couple turns in front of the mirror, like showing off like a model. And it was so like the dog seemed to be really happy about that. But I imagine that's just trained behavior, right?
Most likely the owner gets really excited and really encourages it. And so he's like, I love when they do that. So I'm just going to go do it.
I know. I was excited. If I had a treat and I could have sent it to him, I would have done that. It was hilarious. The dog
Yeah.
just looked like he was preening. Yeah.
And like
So,
most people's dogs, they would do this naturally. Like the first thing I teach people, one of the first things is to ring potty bells to go outside. And
mm,
so we set that up. And at first it's just like, I jingle the bells and then we go outside. I jingle the bells, we go outside. This is a pattern, right? And then the dog's like, one day after about a week or so of doing this, I just pause at the door and I create this gap for them. I go, what do you want to do? And they're like, they want to go outside. And then they ring the bells and then we go outside. And so there comes a point to where we use it for potty training, and then the dog gets smart and it's like, well, I just want to go play outside.
right,
So
right.
then they'll
That's
hit
what
the
I was going
bells
to
and
ask.
go
Yeah.
outside. So most people's dogs are doing this all the time already. So if you think like my dog can never do that, I want you to know it's most likely already happening.
Well, yeah, they'll stand in front of their bowl when when they're hungry. I mean, that's
Mhm.
clearly they want food at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just having ways for them to communicate to you effectively and elegantly.
Right. So you talk about ABC. I guess that's
Mm.
part from the ABA training that usually is used with special needs kids. Is that something different than what we usually think of as stimulus response or stimulus reward and train behavior, like in the classic cognitive behavior kind of way?
So just for clarity, ABC the ABCs of dog training is antecedent, behavior, consequence. So that's going to be what we were just talking about:
Right.
trigger, behavior,
Right.
consequence. ABA therapy is different in the sense that we're shaping the dog. You can condition. So we were just talking about conditioning the dog, right? We like do this, and that's like Pavlovian conditioning, right?
Right.
We can capture behavior. So if our dog's just doing something and we want them to do it again, we can click or say good and we can reward them in some way. And now we're capturing behavior. That's one of the slower ways to train, but we can sometimes capture really cool behaviors. And then we can shape behavior, which is where we're using like our body language to get the dog to go on to something or to do a certain thing, right? And they're like kind of thinking through, and it's like kind of a cause or effect. So it's like you're hot or you're cold. So I'm going to reward you when you're doing things closer to it. And if you go away from it, the reward stops. So the dog's like, okay, well, I'm like, it's important to be over here. So now we're kind of shaping where we want them to go, but they're offering behaviors and then we're rewarding them for that.
Okay.
That's ABA therapy.
Okay. Okay. So I think the burning question probably on a lot of people's minds, either because they have a pet and it's not going well, what they should do, first of all. And then the second question is, if your child is demanding a dog and using the classic, I'll take care of it, I'll feed it, I'll walk it, you'll never have to worry about this, mommy and daddy, because I've got it and please get me one. So
Yeah.
on the first one, what do you recommend to people who have a dog that is not, and it's not going well in the house? Is the first step to get a trainer because it can be fixed, or are there cases where you just say, start over, reset, new dog?
Yeah, I want you to know I've tried both growing up. We grew up with lots of different animals, and my parents, they tried the intimidation method. And that's how I grew up too. And sometimes I felt like I was walking on eggshells, and so did our dogs. If they didn't do something, we would kind of give them that look and be like, "What are you doing?" Or
Yeah.
if they got into trouble, we would like yell at them. But at the end of the day, they continued to do the behavior. So it's like, well, obviously this isn't working very well. You're not really changing any behavior, but it makes you feel better a lot of the times. So when I got my dog, I tried to bribe him. And so I bought the best treats, the best toys. And I was just like, hey, can you do this thing? Can you do this thing? Can you do this thing? And then eventually there came a point where he's like, I don't want that treat anymore. I want the better treat. And it's like, well,
This
shoot,
classic
man.
spoiling the child type of behavior. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm sure we can all remember people in our lives that have intimidated us or bribed us. And it works short term, but long
Right.
term, it's not very effective. And then I look to be an inspiring leader, which means I show them where the value is at, the things. So, for example, what does that mean? My dog gets a bedtime cookie every night. And so he has learned that if he's on his bed, these cookies always go on his bed. And so if he's hungry before it's time to give him the bedtime cookie, he just goes to his bed. And he's like, this is where I know I need to be in order to tell you that I want a cookie. And so we've set up things strategically so he knows how to communicate with me. And I found when people are running into problems with their dog, there isn't an elegant form of communication. Their dog doesn't know how to get what they want. So then they just go and take what they want. And I can't blame them, because if they didn't have the skill, they would be dead. They wouldn't have evolved as animals.
Right.
They need to go out and go take the things that they want. But now in today's world, being domesticated means like I live in abundance, you live in abundance. I'm going to provide all of these things for you. You don't have to steal from me. There are still things you have to do though in order to get this. So that's where I come in and I show people how to get what they want. But for me, right, I didn't always start knowing all of this. Like I said, I started bribing my dog, and there was a day where my friends were like, Brady, you haven't hung out with us in like months. And my dog was like 6 or 7 months old at this time. His name was Bumblebee. And I was like, "Ugh, man, because it's like my dog, like I leave him in the crate and the neighbors say like complain and like he gets into stuff. And I was like, but they're just come out. It'll be for like an hour. And I was like, okay, I'll go out with you guys. So like I left him in my room. I shut the door. I made sure I dog proofed it as much as I could. I put things in boxes, put things away. Couldn't leave him in his crate at the time because like he would bark all the time. And then I left. And then I came home, and the first thing that hit me was this smell. And I was like, oh no, something's wrong. I don't know if anyone else is listening and they've had this happen to them before. And I open the door and his tail's just wagging. And I
Yeah.
look around and there's poop all over the ground. And I'm like, oh. And then like part of the carpet is missing. And I was like, that's $1,000. Like I could have spent that on a dog trainer, but now it's like my deposit. And he's just like, look, Dad, look what I did. And then this dog proofing, I put something in a box inside a box inside of a box, this leather duffel bag I got my dad for Father's Day. And sure enough, he smelt the leather and like went through all the boxes in like 90 minutes. And I was
Right.
like, oh my gosh. And that was my breaking point. That was my rock bottom. And I was like, I need to do something different because I don't want to intimidate. I don't want to bribe. I need to find someone who's actually solved this. And so I found Susan Garrett. She's a 30 plus time world agility champion. I recommend her to everyone. But that's how I got started. And I went and I first taught my dog how to be crate trained. And then I taught him how to come when called. And then I taught him tricks like roll over and play dead. And yeah, it
So
goes from there.
is she more like a train the trainer type of thing? She gives you the skills to then go on and train the dog, or I mean, what is the best format for the training? I mean, because I think some people like send the dog away for a month and then the dog comes back all perfect versus you doing it yourself, maybe with some coaching.
Yeah, you could take any way and be successful, right? Sometimes it just depends on who you are. She has a lot of online programs and like virtual events. And so I dove into those like 100%. And so I nerded out. I took notes. I recorded my videos. I sent them to her team. They gave me feedback on what I did. And that's how I learned. And taking that further, so when I was offering my dog training services to people about 2 years later, the first thing I did was in-person lessons, and that worked well. And then I experimented with board and trains where I would take someone's dog for
Sure.
2, 3 weeks. But then I found like the human needed to be trained too, because like the dog would be well with me, but the humans didn't know how to continue these behaviors. And then also people are like, well, my dog's great at home, but they're terrible when I take him out, like to other places or on walks. And then I was like, oh, okay. So now I've grouped all these together. So I offer in-person lessons where we go over things one-on-one with you in person. I do online coaching with you so we can go over mindset and thinking and like what's going wrong and what do you think is stopping you right now? Because typically, like all we need is within us now. We're pretty resourceful in ourselves. And then I do a board and train. So I'll also take your dog for 2 weeks because I do this stuff all the day. And it's like going to the gym. You have to condition it until it sticks. You got to do it over and over again. And then we have group classes as well, where we meet up out and about town and we practice these same games. And we show our dogs that these rules apply not just at home, but they also apply out and anywhere we go.
Mhm.
So I kind of grouped it all together. But how I started was just watching a bunch of videos and learning through videos.
So you believe that any dog, almost any dog, can be fixed, as it were?
Yes, fun fact, the average dog, and this is Chihuahuas, Pomeranians, all the way up to Border Collies and German Shepherd, they can learn 165 words on average. That's
Wow.
a lot of
That's
words.
yeah.
It's a lot of words, right? And most people, I have this assumption that your dog can learn maybe 20 or 30 words and it would change your life and it would be quite easy for them
Yeah.
because you're only using a fraction of what they're capable of.
So also, do you have any insights into why some dogs seem to be bred to do different things? Like a border collie, for example, if you've ever seen them actually working rather than just being, a dog, they seem to have a skill that's inbred, and that's why they are often used to herd sheep, and they do that really effectively. Is that something that they were taught to do by their owner, or is that something that maybe because of their body shape and everything, their agility, they're kind of set up to do that better than, some other clunky dog or small dog, if you get my meaning.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, we're diving into like nature versus nurture at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah.
And both are very powerful. And you and I, we have different things that are in our nature that are passed down through our genes, through our
Yeah,
family. And yet, just because I was born with a poverty mindset doesn't mean I have to die with one.
sure.
So what that means is I have an Australian Shepherd. He likes to hurt things, and that was one of the things that we
Yeah,
worked on as a puppy. Is like you don't bite my ankles to get me to go where I want
right,
to go,
right, right.
right? If you want me to do something, you got to do what I want first, and that may be sitting or going to your bed or something else. So we have to show them, we have to nurture that in them. But some dogs, they're bred for herding, like border collies are just innately great at it. And there's some dogs that were bred for like nobility and they just like a Bichon, they just are supposed to like sleep by your feet and keep you comfortable. So they're a little bit more calm and more relaxed. And yet you can still show them how to be focused and engaged and turn on when you want them to and then turn off.
Yeah, it's the herding one really mystifies me because I get the fact that maybe a dog is bred to be smarter or more attractive or lazier and doesn't move around a lot. But that border collie or any kind of that border mentality is completely different. It's a thinking skill. It's a strategic skill. It seems to demand a higher level of intelligence. It's just fascinating. So most dogs can be trained, and there are resources. Where are you located? Just so everybody knows.
I'm in Austin, Texas, and to
Okay.
back up just one step, herding is very intelligent and yet it's done very simply. Like most
Yeah.
things are simple but not easy. So I've taken herding classes. And you know how you start with herding classes? Is you run around and you chase the sheep and your dog starts to mirror you, right? And they're
Right.
like, oh, this is what you want. And then you teach them what to do when the sheep go into a corner and you start small with any behavior. Yes, dogs, you can't just take a border collie and just like expect them to herd for miles. You start off small, like kindergarten, first grade, and then you keep taking
Yeah.
steps to go to PhD level. But it starts off just like you would any skill, but they're just more naturally inclined to enjoy doing it because it's been in their lineage for longer and
Right.
longer.
Okay. So I guess the big question that we alluded to is what do you do when your child wants to get a dog and will take care of it? Or even if your partner wants to get a dog, which is the case in our household, I want to get a dog. My wife thinks, she'll end up being the one who has to walk it and feed it and take care of it. I keep on saying, no, I will, I'll do all the work. You'll never have to worry about it. How do you, I sure there's some of these skills as a coach for humans and for dogs. You're thinking like, well, there are ways to incentivize or teach the human, usually in this case, a smaller child, like a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old child, to follow through on that promise, which I think most people are afraid that promise will be broken within a week.
Yeah, and for my family, like they did this multiple times and we tricked our parents multiple
Yeah.
times and
Yeah.
like,
Good kids
what
do
I've
it.
learned from that and what I help teach other people is don't give away your power to your kid. Like, understand that most likely this isn't going to go how you anticipate it, and help them and teach them what it's like. That means you have to step up as a parent and also be a part of the solution. You can't just
Yeah.
hand your dog off to
Right.
your 12-year-old kid or your 14-year-old kid. It's just not going to work. It's just not intelligent, in my opinion. And then you set up situations and a culture around your house about when you do this, you get this, right? And what that means for your kid is like, you can't go hang out with your friends until you take the dog for a walk. I'm going to go on a walk with you, right? So I'm going to make sure that this walk is fun for you because there's probably things going on for a kid that are going to be distracting, just like a
Yeah.
dog. So it requires the parent stepping up and working as a team. And I also emphasize to people in a relationship, if it's with you and your partner, with you and your kids, it's never about the dishes. It's never about if their room is clean. It's never about the ship, right? It's not if your dog sits or if they're quiet and they're great. It's about your relation to them. And how do you relate around problems? How do you guys problem solve together? And most of the time, if you guys are arguing about the dishes, there's something that's deeper down than it's about the dishes, right? So it's like you create a culture where you can have real and honest conversations, be like, what's stopping you from doing this? What's holding you back? And the kid's going to tell you, and your partner's going to tell you. And it's like, great, you can take that and just throw it away and be like, well, I still expect you to do this. Or you can take it and process it and be like, okay, let's create a solution for this to be effective. And like, let's work together to find something.
Yeah, I
That's
think a lot of parents get worried that they now own this dog and getting rid of the dog will be really hard. And they feel like that's the only cudgel they have is to say, well, if you don't do it, I'm going to take away the dog. And then, I mean, that's really a sad ending to that story. I mean, the child has learned a lesson that they've lost this friend. So I get the part of that being a good coach like parent and asking them questions, but I think a lot of people are really afraid that it'll end up being I've already used up my power. My only power is taking away the dog or leaving the dog there. And they're afraid they're going to get a situation where they're going to be too permissive because they want to keep the dog.
Yeah, what I would tell you is to like look at your life honestly, and if you don't have the capacity to have a dog and to be a part of it, don't get a dog, right?
Yeah.
Dogs are a lot of work. They require energy and effort, and you got to take them on walks. Now, if you want something that can start, so I'm the oldest of six. So I grew up a very responsible kid, and I had to do a lot of things that most people don't, right? The oldest syndrome. My
Yeah.
girlfriend is the youngest. So like I'm out here training dogs and doing these things and like I take care of all of their needs. Like she doesn't have to worry about anything with the dogs. So for her though, we got guinea pigs. And so we started with guinea pigs. And so she was like, started to take care of guinea pigs because she hadn't really taken care of any animals before.
Mhm.
And having an easier animal is sometimes a good segue to, and they have a shorter life expectancy. There's less work to be done. And so we can start off at a kindergarten level with our kid and maybe get them a fish. Get like, can you take care of a fish first? If you prove to me you can take care of a fish, then we'll step up and we'll go to the next thing. Can you take care of a lizard or a guinea pig or something else, right? And then if you can prove to me that you can do this, then we can take care of a dog. And so if you take them through the steps and you don't have to jump, most people just want to jump to a dog, which is probably the hardest thing you could do.
Mhm.
Even cats are easier. Cats take care of themselves most of the time. They're more independent. So that's what the advice what I give you is to start smaller or be real and be like, we can't take care of a dog right now, and share with your kid why we can't take care of a dog, and maybe go get a goldfish and
Right.
see what happens.
So I'm hearing two things there. One is this stepped up training where you start small and you get larger, and maybe they even are in on the whole thing, is like, we're going to do this progressively. You're going to get a
Sure.
succession of animals. And at some point, hopefully before you turn 60, you'll get your dog. And then the second part is not having an illusion that despite the best intentions of the child, that they are going to do all the work. You're still going to probably have to really step up and take care of that dog, and maybe have that expectation going in so you don't develop resentment and anger and bad emotions toward the dog and the child.
Yeah, expectations are where a lot of problems come from. And if it takes you until 60 to get a dog, you've already demonstrated to me that you're incapable of taking care of a dog, and I would never allow you to have a dog because it's not fair to the dog. So you're giving me feedback based on your responses, and I'm gonna let you know, like, hey, your goldfish died again. Like, you're not really showing me that you can take care of a dog. How would you feel if a dog died? And
Yeah.
so good feedback.
Well, say similar with children. I mean, some people should not be parents because they just don't have that capacity to sacrifice the way you do, far more with a child than you do with a dog, but it's the same type of patterns of behavior that you need to be ready to step up to.
Well, diving in on that, at the beginning, you said that you believe all people can change. I believe all people can change if they want to.
Right. Right.
And so if they have this, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So the story that they tell, and so if someone says that I don't have the skills to be a parent, then yeah, of course you don't. But if someone says I'm willing to learn and do whatever it takes to get these skills, you'll be an amazing parent because no one goes into it thinking that they have all the answers. And if you do, you'll find out really quickly that you don't.
Yeah, very true. Okay. So people can find you. You're in Austin, Texas, if you want to do live training, but you can do the training and the help across the country. And people can find you at, well, newdirectiondogtraining.com, but then also your Instagram is ND Dog Training. So letter N, letter D, dog training, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we can do Zoom lessons virtually. I do them all across the country, as well as in-person lessons if you're here in Austin.
Yeah. Well, Brady, thanks a lot for spending some time with us. I think this is it's one of those smaller parts of parenting, but because that sometimes looms really large, because if you don't give in, it can be 5 or 6 years of your child constantly saying, when am I going to get my puppy? And it can be quite frustrating. The only thing worse is people who want horses, since that's even a bigger financial.
Yeah, I would make sure that they can handle a dog before a horse. And
Yeah,
if you can handle a dog and you got the income for it, a horse would be amazing. I would love to have horses.
Okay. Paul Banis with GreatDad.com. You can find my coaching services at GreatDad.com/go. I offer a variety of group coaching programs, including one on building resilience using many of the techniques we've talked about. A lot of these coaching modalities are somewhat similar in their approach and the kind of the way we all believe that the brain can be changed, that there is a potential for old habits to be eradicated and move on to more positive solutions to daily challenges. Okay. Thanks again. Take care.
Yeah.